Hey everybody, this is Zach from Board with Friends, and today I'm looking to do what might become a series of videos on my process on how I want to build decks for the Transformers trading card game. I don't begin to pretend that I am the greatest deck crafter of all time. I used to play a lot of Magic growing up, and then I kind of fell out of it, and I kind of stayed away from TCGs and CCGs for a while, but this game brought me back into the fold. So it's been kind of a relearning process for me. If anyone's watched any of our live plays recently, you see I'm kind of on a bit of a losing streak, but you know, I really had to sit down and think about, okay, what's causing this losing streak, and really it comes down to the way I've been crafting these decks. So this first video is really about a new deck that I just created and my process on how I decided to go about doing it. If you want to learn way more about, you know, the nuances, there are other videos out there. This is really just me talking about what I'm doing. If you have comments on it or critiques that you'd like to make on, you know, changes that I could do to make it better, you know, the deck itself, or maybe the video, please feel free to, you know, comment below. Keep it civil. But, you know, this is really what I wanted to look at, you know, just, you know, talk it out and see what I needed to do to make this better. So my thought process on this particular deck was I wanted to... Well, the way I used to do it was I would just pick characters that I liked, see if they have cool abilities, and then I would, you know, build a deck around, you know, the cards, the utilities, the upgrades, and things like that. I didn't really pay attention to the balance of the battle icons that you wanted to, that you flip when you flip over the cards. That's one of the problems when you're, you know, flipping, is it's randomized. You don't know what's going to come out. So making a deck that I have a little bit more control over appealed to me. So I started with the character that I wanted to do the most, which was Shockwave. This was a super rare that I pulled, not in a Cracking Packs episode. It was just from a random... I just bought one pack at Target, and super lucky that I got this guy. Really happy that I got him because he's Shockwave. He's awesome, right? What makes Shockwave interesting, and the reason I want him to be my primary, that I want to build this deck around, is he has some of the coolest abilities I've really ever seen. He's got great stats. That's a given. I mean, he's Shockwave. He is a little pricey at 14 stars, but the reason he's worth it is when you look at his actual abilities. So no matter which side you're on, you may look at the top card of your deck at any time with Shockwave, which is huge because you always have a sense of what's coming up, what you're about to draw, what you need to draw. Then on his spaceship side, his alt mode, when you flip to this mode, so if you're on the robot mode and transform him back into a spaceship, you get to draw a card, and then your opponent chooses a card from their hand, and they have to scrap it. So right off the bat, when you're flipping to the spaceship mode, you have an element of control over, one, you get an extra card, which is huge, and two, you have an element of control over your opponent's hand, so you can start messing with them in that respect. And one card, maybe not a big deal, but once I get into the cards that I put into here, it will become a big deal. And this is the core mechanic that I'm making my deck around. So when you transform Shockwave, his other ability, just to go over this real quick, is that, yes, you still get to look at the top card of your deck at any time, which I love. While the top card of your deck is a Decepticon card or a secret action card, you may play it as though it were in your hand. So that is huge. You get to always be looking at the top card of your deck, and if it's a secret action or if it's a Decepticon upgrade, and I'll get into what those look like in a second, you just get to play it if you want to. It's part of your hand, and I love that, which goes into, again, what I put into this deck here, and we'll get more into that in a minute. But we're not ready to talk about the deck just yet. We got Shockwave, okay? Now, who do we put in here to kind of complement him? Now, my first build of this, I decided to use two different characters that you wouldn't expect. Well, one you might expect. I chose to use a character called Acid Storm. Acid Storm had a really neat ability which made it so that the your opponent could not use bold. And I put that in the mindset of, if I'm playing against Sean's aerial bot deck, he has a lot of bold in there, which lets him flip extra cards and do all this crazy damage, and that would negate it completely. But I had to change my plans because I thought I owned Acid Storm. I can't find him. So that changed that deck completely. But the other card that I put with him was this guy here, Mudslinger. And at first I thought it was a good idea because I had built the battle deck around having a lot of damage, orange and black pips to get. The black pips give you Pierce, so I figured I would have a lot of those in my hand. And Mudslinger's ability is, if you scrap a black pip from your hand, you move 1 damage counter from one of your characters to an enemy. So a way to kind of heal myself but also damage my enemy at the same time. I thought, that's a great idea. But then I started thinking about Shockwave's ability, and again, the main theme of, this is my main guy, this is my primary, I want the whole thing to be a complement to him. And Mudslinger doesn't work in that respect because he's an Autobot. In order to use Shockwave to his best ability, I need to put Decepticon-heavy cards in here, and Mudslinger won't be able to use those. So I'm kind of hurting myself in that respect. So him and Acid Storm were out. The other one I considered was Private Lionizer as a weaponizer, because I really like his ability on here, which just gives Bolt 4, which is doing extra damage, and they get to do Plan. But, again, it's an Autobot card. But him being a weaponizer, I'm trying to knock him out. So I looked at the rest of the cards that I had, and the first thing I chose, well, not the first thing, but the next thing I chose was, I looked at Roadhugger. So as a Micromaster, he has stealth when he's in vehicle mode. He's very cheap, he's only 5 stars. And when I transform him, you can tap and scrap a blue card from your hand. One of your characters gets +3 attack until end of turn. A nice compliment if I'm trying to do extra damage with Shockwave, who already has amazing stats. So right off the bat, if I happen to have a blue card in my hand and I want to do some real heavy damage, I could scrap the blue, tap Roadhugger, and give Shockwave +3, which would, in his robot mode, knock him up to a 10, which is awesome. And I said, you know what, that's not a bad idea, and I could keep transforming him back to give him stealth, so I could protect him in that respect. And then I have some other cards in here to help protect him. So that's Roadhugger. The final choice for my team was Nightstick. So having a weaponizer, going off of Lionizer and some of the other ones I looked at, one, I wanted him to be a Decepticon, because it fits the theme and some of the cards that I have in here. But Nightstick costs 6 stars. He's one of the more expensive weaponizers. Most of them I think are 5. I don't think any are 7, but I'd have to double check. But he's got okay stats for a weaponizer. He's 2 attacks, 6 health, 1 defense. But the thing about weaponizers is you want them to die. You want to knock them out. He's a target master. He's going to transform into a weapon. In his Black Beam Blaster, when the upgraded character attacks and you flip at least 2 black pips, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and scraps it. So again, more control aspects. I felt like this is a good idea to put in going off of the theme of Shockwave's abilities. Plus it doesn't hurt that he gives +2 attack and +1 defense, which is really one of the things I like most about him. So that's my team. That's who I've decided to build this around. There might be some better choices here, but I really felt like the abilities here complemented each other, and having them all be Decepticons, it's going to go into what I built the battle deck around, which is really, it's all based around Shockwave's abilities. So the idea that I went into this was I wanted to make it a very attack-heavy deck with a lot of complements to the control. So when I'm flipping cards, I want to be able to, you know, have just adding extra damage. Okay, so I might not have Pierce all the time. I might not have the best defense all the time, but there's upgrades in here that I can play. There are a lot of, you know, orange pip cards that will add to that level of defense. And you're going to see as I flip through these cards and go through them, there's a lot of orange. Probably should have sorted this before I decided to do it. But the cards in here, you notice these are the Decepticon heavy cards. These complement Shockwave a lot because he's going to be able to play those right from his hand. I also added in quite a few secret action cards. Secret action cards are crucial. I haven't had a lot of luck with them, but with Shockwave, I feel like I'll be able to get them out a lot. And you notice as I'm sorting this, so far there's only been one card with... That's a blue. That's also a blue. There's only been one card that has no pips at all. And there's a reason for that. One of the things I've noticed is I usually like to put healing cards in my deck, and like Medic and stuff like that, which do not have any pips on them, which stinks because it means I got these cards, but usually I'm flipping them. So it's all about the flip. I stopped thinking about the special abilities that I wanted on these cards, the upgrades and the actions, and I thought more about, does this card have a pip that's going to help me? And that's why you'll notice this stack, it's all orange, and there's a lot of it. There's a couple in here that are orange and black, which is great, like Rock Toss and things. Oops. But there's very few that are blue. I got some blue in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 blue, but it's very orange heavy. I think there's 13 orange in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There was 16 because I think there was a blue in here. Yep, there it is. So 10 blue, 16 orange. So I got right off the bat a balance of heavy towards attack. So every single turn when I'm flipping cards, I'm going to be very probably adding attack to it, or I'm going to be very probably adding some pierce to it. So damage. It's all about damage right now. And then I have a ton of these secret action cards. And I have several of relevant Decepticon cards. So these cards right here, there's about 14 of them out of a 40-card deck. A good chance that these are going to be at the top, or I'm going to have a way to get them. So that's how I crafted the deck based on the pips. I said I want this kind of balance. So I picked a lot of orange pipped cards that are going to be helpful, but also add that damage that I need. And then I started crafting the secret action cards in there and putting them in. I said I need to have as many of these as possible. The secret actions to me are a really fun mechanic. When you flip those, if you play them face down, and then you wait until they trigger. Most of them are triggered when your opponent attacks you, so when your character is defending. And they add a lot of cool little tricks. Like I can get more cards into my hand with Battlefield Report. I can get... Where are the other ones? I can get extra defense in there, so when your character defends, each of your characters gets +1 defense until end of turn, which would be huge, especially if I'm playing against Sean's Aerial Bot deck, because he has more characters than me, so he's going to have rounds where he'll get off extra attacks. And then I also, this is the only one of this card I have, but Scavenge the Battlefield when one of my characters is knocked out. Instead of scrapping that character's upgrades, I may put any number of them onto one of my other characters, which would be a very cool ability, especially when it comes to some of these cards that I'm going to be almost guaranteed to get out very quickly, like the HV Breacher, the Scoundrel Blaster, and a very important card, my Disruptor Launcher, which can only go on Shockwave. So the cards that I chose to put in here now based on abilities, we'll take a look at. Yes, we went over the secret actions, but I chose some blue pip cards like Brainstorm, which are always useful because it just lets me play more actions that I have in my hand. I put 2 of those in. And then I put in 2 unconventional flying objects. And this goes back to, tying back to Shockwave's ability. The unconventional flying object, it lets you flip one of your spaceships to bot mode and then flip it back to alt mode. So realistically, I could put it in, I could transform Shockwave from his robot mode to his spaceship mode, trigger his ability where I get to draw a card and my opponent gets to, has to scrap a card. Then I could play unconventional flying object from my hand as my action, flip him back to robot mode, and then back to vehicle mode, and hit him again with forcing my opponent to scrap the card. If I tied that up with a brainstorm, just happened to have brainstorm in my hand and 2 unconventional flying objects in my hand, that would be pretty cool, because then I could do it again. And I could deplete my opponent's hand just from this ability, which is great. And at the same time, I'm filling my hand because I'm drawing cards every time I do it. So I really like that card for that reason. And then I had in 2 Vaporizes, because one, I wanted a little bit of blue in the deck, but it also is really useful to have Vaporize in there because I get to scrap enemy upgrades, so I can get rid of some of those pesky upgrades that Sean likes to put on his aerial bots. So that's the blue cards. Then we take a look at some of these orange cards. So I added Stealthiness, which allows me to, I could choose to put this on one of my characters so that I could, defend them a little bit. Maybe force the attacks going towards Nightstick so that he gets knocked out faster, so I get to use his weaponizer mode. Defensive formation we already talked about. I threw 3 of these in. Same with Battlefield. And then I threw in this card, Bashing Shield. I haven't really messed around with the green pips all that much. I like the idea of them. When you flip a card that has green on it, after the battle is done, after everything's resolved, I can trade a card out from my hand and take this into my hand. And this goes into getting more upgrades into my hand. I want to try out a deck that gives me more upgrade abilities. And I like this card because if I flip it, it's orange for an attack, and then I can take it into my hand because it's got a green pip. When I put this on a character, and I can then scrap an enemy armor, which again messes with my opponent, and it adds +1 defense to whoever I add it to. So I could throw this on Shockwave and give him a beefier defense. Then I put in Energy Pack. Put only on characters with 11 stars or more, so Shockwave, and the upgraded character gets +4 health, which is great. It does stink if this gets removed by an ability from your opponent, because the health goes right back down again. But you could tie this in with I believe there's a card, there's a backup pack or something like that. I don't remember if it's a utility or not. It probably is. But that one allows you to lose the other thing. No, actually, I think it is a utility, so that won't work. And I didn't put it in the deck anyway. But it's got an orange pip on it, so if I flip it, again, adding to damage. And then Squish Them Like Bugs. This is such an interesting card. It's got an orange pip, so it's helpful there. And I can choose one of my characters when it does attack damage this turn to an enemy that has fewer stars than it. I do 1 damage to each enemy that has fewer stars than my character. Now, Roadhugger is a 5-star character, so I wouldn't choose Roadhugger. But Nightstick and Shockwave both have 6 stars and 14 stars. So I could just choose Shockwave with this and almost always use this to the best of the ability. But I know if I'm playing against Sean's aerial bots, they are all 5-star characters. So I could even put this on Nightstick and do a lot of damage with it. So incredibly useful in my opinion. And I put 2 of those in the deck. Then we have this card here. This is one of the few Wave 1 cards I put in. But I really like this card. One is 2 orange pips, so incredibly useful. But then I may knock out a character that has 6 stars or more. If I do, I take an extra turn after this one. There's the very specific reason I put this in is why a lot of people who play with weaponizers put this in. Most of the weaponizers are 6 stars or fewer. Or 6 star. There's a lot of weaponizers that are 6 stars. So if I play this on Nightstick, I can knock him out, which transforms him into his attack mode, which means I can attach him to Shockwave or to Roadhugger. And from there, I get an extra turn on top of that, so I could then potentially attack with whoever I attached it to and do even more damage, which I really like the idea of. And if I don't end up drawing this or getting it into my hand, if I use it on attack, it's 2 pips. It's 2 oranges that's adding 2 attack damage to my turn. So unless I flip this on a defense, which with my luck I will, it's useful no matter what. Then we have Rock Toss. Rock Toss I like better than Zap because it does 1 damage to a tapped enemy, but it also adds in not only the orange pip, but also a black pip, so it adds in Pierce when I flip it. So incredibly useful either in the hand or on an attack flip. We have Improvised Shield, again, 2 orange pips, and then if I use it as an upgrade, it's Tough 1, which is helpful for defending. And then I added in another Stealthiness, but 2 Power Punches. This is a card I've never really used before, but I added it because, again, orange. I based it on pips, but it adds Bold 3. And after the upgraded character attacks, I scrap it. So it's a one-time use, but it's a really good one-time use. So I can put it on there, and once I use that attack, they get to flip 3 extra battle cards. So again, all about the damage with this deck. And moving on down the road, the white pip cards. Added in a couple of these. These are the ones that I chose for the simple reason that I can, for the most part, flip extra cards with them, but these are based on abilities, what they add to my cards when I have them in my hand. So Callous Leadership was a card I never thought I would actually use, but it does work because Shockwave is a leader. I can move up to 5 damage counters from one of my Decepticon leaders that has 8 stars or more to one of my other characters. So another way to keep Shockwave in the game. Shockwave is essential to this deck working. If he gets knocked out, I'm pretty much done, and he will probably be targeted the most. So to me, it makes perfect sense to put a card like this in the game, because if I do get to play it, then I can move damage from him. I could potentially knock out Nightstick, which lets him transform, or I can move it to Roadhugger just to keep Shockwave in the game longer. A surprise attack, adding Pierce is always helpful, so I like that action. Force Field, again, a little bit of a defensibility. It's a one-shot defender, but especially if I'm playing against Sean's aerial bots, if he gets transformed, this will be huge because that'll mitigate some of the damage that he can cause. Then I added in 2 Frag Tosses. I like Frag Toss because, one, white pips are helpful. They allow you to, they don't add anything to battle, but they do let you flip more cards, so they make it worth it in that respect. And because I chose a all-Decepticon deck, my opponent, I do 1 damage to my opponent. It's with their choice, though, who I get to damage. But if I started the team with all Decepticons, my opponent does 1 more damage to the chosen character. So they're doing 2 to that chosen character. And I have 2 of those in there. And I'll talk about System Reboot in a moment. And then I chose Escape Route. The reason I chose Escape Route is because it goes back to Shockwave's ability. Again, I want to tie everything into Shockwave in that theme of flipping him and doing his ability. Flip characters from bot mode to alt mode. So if he's in bot mode, I can get an extra transform in and knock him, maybe move him to his robot mode, and I can play this action afterwards to move him back so I can get more out of that ability. And I like it. And it also has a green pip on it, so after I've flipped it in a battle, I can take it into my hand, which is super useful. And then System Reboot. So I really debated on putting this in or not. I don't like the idea of giving my opponent a possible advantage of getting new cards. Maybe they have a crap hand and they would like this. But at the same time, if I have no cards in my hand, or just this card in my hand, this is a useful way to get more cards. So I like that idea. Also, the white pips are helpful. So I decided to throw 1 in here just to try it. And then we move on to these cards here. So I chose Metal Detector because when the upgraded character attacks, I reveal the top card of my deck. If it's an upgrade, I may play it. And I like the idea of this being a green pip. If I flip this in a battle, whether defense or whatever, I can take this into my hand as long as I have cards to trade out. And then I could, play the upgrade, which will allow me to play more upgrades. It's going to be helpful. And I'll always know what the first card is because of Shockwave, as long as he's on the board. So I thought this would be a very good card to have in here. I almost want to put a second one in. I might, do that, but I haven't decided yet. And then the point defense system. The reason I put this card in is, 1, black pips are useful. They add Pierce. While the upgraded character is defending against an enemy that has Pierce, I reduce that enemy's Pierce total by 2. I know Sean's Superion deck has a lot of things that allow him to add Pierce, which means damage gets through usually no matter what, and this helps me mitigate that. And it gives me Pierce, which is cool. But the last card I added in of regular cards is the EM24 IR Laser Launcher. This is the only card I added in that does not have a pip, and the reason I added in was going off of the theme of damage. I want to get my guys, stronger and add more damage to them. And this adds +3 attack. So I put that in there. This is the only card that I'm considering taking out and putting in another one of these for, but it's in there for a reason. So really, this deck is built around all of Shockwave's abilities. That was the theme here. I said, you know what, I'm not going to keep building decks that have a balance to them, because that's one of my problems. I will want to have a balance between orange and blue, and I focused heavily on what the card abilities are and didn't always pay attention to what I'm putting in there. I loved having in a lot of brainstorms, but brainstorm adds more blue. So if I'm always flipping blue, then on my attacks I'm not adding anything to them. So this is kind of my process, how I built this deck. If you have any comments on it, please add them below. Keep it civil, like I said. I like the idea of what I built here. I'm eager to try it out. It'll definitely be used in one of our next live plays, and who knows, maybe this will be the one that takes down Superion. Maybe I'm crazy and you got some suggestions to make it better. I'm still looking to replace that Acid Storm, because I'd like to build a deck around him too. I thought that was a cool support character. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think. Like the video if you like it. If you want to see more videos of crafting decks, comment that below too. Let me know. I had a little bit of fun, making this, and I thought, putting it on a video form would be helpful for others to see my process. Maybe they'll learn what not to do. But this was fun. I really had to think about what I want to do here, and I'm eager to try this out. So do like the cool kids do. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.